Sharon Hawkins. I work with the Arkansas Department of Transportation, Chair of the GIS Board. Matt?
I'm Matt Strahan. I am Director of Geospatial Services at Data Scout.
Daryl Allen, GIS and Technology Coordinator for the City of Hope.
Beth Rush, Ashley County Assessor.
Good morning, I'm Shelby Johnson. I'm in the Arkansas GIS Office, Department of Transformation and Shared Services.
Scott Lane, I'm a GIS analyst at the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission.
John Nellen, I'm Assistant Professor of Geospatial Technologies at Arkansas State University College of Agriculture.
I'm Darren Mitchell. I'm the Manager of Information and Innovation for the Department of Parks, Heritage, and Tourism.
Nita Weeks, GIS Office.
Jonathan Duran, Deputy Director at the GIS Office, and technical support for today's meeting.
Edgar Merziowski is with the USDA NRCS State Soil Science.
Melissa Walker, GIS Office.
Jennifer Wheeler, GIS Office.
Daniel Phillips, State Surveyor, GIS Office.
Steve Martin, Land Survey Division Monument Coordinator.
Thank you, everybody. All right, now we're going to go to our Zoom participants. Dr. Cleaver, can we start with you? Terry?
Yeah, Terry Cleaver, UACCM in Marlton here, the surveying instructor.
Cody?
Good morning, everyone. Cody Decker, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs at UAD Little Rock.
Doug?
Doug Milton, Consulting Geologist and Civil Engineer.
All right. Chris?
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Pertini. I'm with the USGS National Geospatial Program.
I'm glad you're joining us this morning. Casey?
Casey Fenway with the GIS office.
Hey, it looks like we also have Sanborn that has joined us this morning.
Hi, I'm John Koppel. I'm the CEO of the Sanborn Map Company.
Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jason Caldwell. I'm the Vice President of Business Development for Sanborn as well.
Rusty? Judge McMillan? All right, that's okay. That's all right. All right. We have established that we have a quorum for our meeting. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read the minutes that Nita has sent out to us a couple of weeks ago. If you haven't, we can certainly look through them, but if we have, then I'd like to open it up for a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Dr. John.
Second.
The second, thank you. All right, any discussion? All in favor to approve the minutes from our June the 8th meeting, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, minutes approved. All right, so if the board will allow me, just for a second. So today on our agenda, we're going to have a very big conversation, a very big important conversation about something that's going to come up for the state of Arkansas. And I just wanted to talk about when I first started with the DOT, talking about imagery. My first day, they assigned me a county to digitize. And they said, here's 2 boxes, the boxes look like this, of photos for your county. 300 photos. 300 photos. 300 photos that look like this, okay? And they said, what you have to do is scan in these photos on a small flatbed scanner at 200 DPI, and then each photo has to be rubber sheeted in your CAD program, and then you have to digitize what's new from that photo, okay? 300 photos. They also issued me a pair of stereoscopes. Okay? And they said, sometimes you're gonna have to do overlays for these photos. There's 30% overlap, and you're gonna have to look at elevation differences and such as you do these maps. And I was scared to death. But oh, how times have changed, right? Right? So today, we're going to be talking about our next statewide aerial image flight. While these are wonderful for what they were, I'm so glad that I don't have to deal with 300 photos per county anymore, like we used to have to. I know that also on the agenda that we were going to be introducing ourselves to Secretary Rouse. Secretary Fetcher left the agency back in June, is that correct, Shelby? So Secretary Rouse is now the new secretary. Hopefully we'll get to see him at a follow-up meeting. All right, so let's move forward to our LiDAR update. Shelby, will you?
Yeah, absolutely. We're really honored and pleased to have with us today our USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service state soil scientist for covering all of Arkansas. Edgar has been in this role for over a decade now. I can't remember how many years. And he's been a good partner with the state and has a genuine interest in seeing data be developed and supported. And so he's going to be talking about an update on quality level 2. And then we also have Chris Gratini with us from the U.S. Geological Survey. And Chris is going to furnish some information as well.
I think we're going to
swap it.
Right, because what Chris has leads into what we were doing.
Chris introduced himself earlier by Zoom, but Chris is our liaison to the National Geospatial Program Office. He is in Louisiana but covers a number of states including Arkansas. And he's also been a close friend to Arkansas in supporting data development and programs. And so with that, Chris, I think we have your slides on the screen.
Okay, great. Shelby, thank you very much. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I appreciate the invitation to be here for the LiDAR update along with Edgar. So what I would like to do is tell you about some upcoming collection plans within the USGS. And I know in the course of sharing those plans with Shelby and Jonathan and Edgar, Edgar came back and shared some plans of his own that NRCS has going on. So it was actually a great opportunity to catch up with the GIS leadership in Arkansas and with the primary partners who collect LiDAR data there. Because as you know, NRCS and FEMA have, for the most part, collected the majority of the state over the years. But of course, they work in partnership with 3DEP program, which is the 3D elevation program, and USGS. So I'll share our updates, and I believe I've met most people, but if you don't know me, I'm the National Map Liaison to Arkansas. I'm located in Lafayette, Louisiana. I was last up there for the spring meeting, but glad to join you again today. So what you're looking at here is a status map of the 3D elevation program. This was current as of July 25th. The dark green colors, kind of the forest green, shows you areas that have 3DEP coverage, and that is what is considered quality level 2, which is approximately 2 points per meter on the ground and a 1 meter digital elevation model. So that's the minimum qualification to meet 3DEP specs. I'll call it the neon green, are partnerships that are in progress, and then kind of the lighter green color are contributed projects, just to give you kind of set the picture here. Approximately 84% of the nation has 3DEP coverage as of this status graphic. And you notice there's still some disparity between the eastern side of the country and the west, so there is still a focus on completing a once-over coverage for the country, and a lot of focus is being put into some of those western states where there's a lot of federally owned land, which makes partnerships a little bit more difficult to put together. But if you look closely here in Arkansas, you'll see some small white areas that we're going to focus on for the upcoming coverage. And those are some older NRCS projects, and that's the focus of where we're going to complete what we can finally call complete statewide coverage for Arkansas. So next slide, please. And I'm going to use the U.S. Interagency Elevation Inventory to kind of show you where these footprints come from, and just as a reminder that this is a great resource that's out there. This is something that's hosted by NOAA. USGS helps NOAA maintain this along with NRCS and other partners. We update this each spring and fall, and it's meant to serve as a resource to show what elevation data exists and what projects are ongoing. In fact, we're in the process of the fall 2022 update, so I'm in the process of adding the upcoming coverage to the elevation inventory. You see the web address up at the top. If you go to the next slide, what this allows you to do is click a point on the map, and wherever you click, it will show you what LiDAR data is out there. So in this case, I'm showing an example of the 2017 FEMA project that was the Ouachita Basin coverage out of Region 6. So when you click the point on the map, you will see the project name, you'll see the dates of collection, whether it meets 3DEP specs. You'll see the various blocks that it was broken into. So if you were to go to download the data, you'd see those various folders out there. And if you're on the page and you scroll down, you would also see things like the vertical accuracy, the available products, the datum, the point classes that were collected with the data. And there's a link of where to download the data. So in this case, it's the National Map website that it would point you to. But this is a great resource. So if you're looking for LiDAR, not sure if it exists or not sure what the current coverage is, I'd encourage you to go check out the inventory. And if we go to the next slide, the inventory is downloadable. So if you wanted to see where those gaps existed, as I did, you could download the inventory to your desktop and bring it into a GIS, and then you could query on which footprints meet the 3DEP spec. And if you did that, you would end up with some gaps for these particular projects. So these 6 projects here are those polygons that there is LiDAR there. As you can see, these are the names of the projects that you'd see in the inventory, but they're older projects. Edgar may touch on these or may have more background on them, but these either predated the 3DEP program or were just, 3DEP was just getting going. I think 2012, 2013 is when we officially say 3DEP began, depending on if you count the precursor to 3DEP and kind of the beta program. But these are some of the older projects where we're going to be collecting data coming this winter. So if you go to the next slide, which I think is my last one. So these are the actual footprints that match up with those projects we just looked at. So on the west is the 2011 Conway. That one on White and Prairie County is the 2013 Little Red River Irrigation. Below that is the Arkansas Natural Heritage Project. And then working our way up, and St. Francis and Cross is the 2011 Village Creek State Park. Up in Craighead, we have the 2011 Jonesboro. And then up in the corner is the New Madrid project that was from 2012. So this kind of came up as a last minute opportunity. Probably not more than a month to a month and a half ago, I was contacted by our 3-depth elevation coordinator, and he said they had some year-end funds. They were looking around the country at some opportunities, and they wanted to go after these projects in Arkansas, which is great to hear. And so the project has been awarded just recently. It is planned for a QL2 collection. And again, that's 2 points per meter and a 1 meter DEM is what we will end up with. Our collection window is the leaf-off season, so approximately December through about March or April, depending on conditions there. In Arkansas is our collection window. It will then be processed, and if things go well during the collection and in the processing, we're looking at having a final deliverable towards the end of calendar year 2023. So sometime in the fall 2023, towards the end of the year, we should have data delivered and published on the national map. And I believe I have one more, just a contact slide for more information on 3-depth. I think most are familiar with the program, but if you want to learn more about it, including what we call the broad agency announcement, may not apply to Arkansas in this case, since you do have a lot of LiDAR there, in addition to what Edgar's going to talk about. But the broad agency announcement, which is the RFP process for partnering with 3-depth, is going to open, I believe it's targeted for the beginning of October. And that's where the program would accept submissions and consider cost share proposals for additional projects. And next slide, you can always contact me if you have questions on this upcoming project or anything regarding the national map and 3-depth. I'd be glad to follow up with anyone on the board to answer your questions. And I think this is going to lead right into what Edgar is going to talk about. Of course, NRCS is a big 3-depth partner. Our respective 3-depth points of contact coordinate on projects. So I'm sure they'll be working together on the coverage for Arkansas and also interested in what Edgar's going to update on the NRCS plans. And with that, I will pass it to Edgar. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. It's always great to be working with our partners and telling them about, hey, there's some exciting times coming up as far as refreshing data and that. This year, do I, or do you do? Okay. This year we got a bulletin about refreshing data. This was internal to us about possibilities. And so we knew that we were wanting to look at refreshing some of our data, and I'll show some dates of some of the information that we have. But we were looking at, these are some of the criteria that we were given for us internally. You know, whether it was for our agency a high workload at counties. Well, most of eastern Arkansas for us is high workload. A lot of conservation on the ground, a lot of dirt moving practices. And so there is, see if there was a significance of HU farmers that were out in those areas. The other is the existing LiDAR, and this is what caught most of our eye and my boss's eye and says, well, a lot of our LiDAR is over 8 years old already, especially that in eastern Arkansas. So we were looking at that, and then the partner portion. Well, we really didn't have time to go to partners. We only had 9 days to decide. Okay, so that wouldn't have been fair to our partners saying, hey, where's your priorities at? Because it would have been scattered everywhere anyway. So we took an approach of looking at where, kind of where could we start in our priorities. So if you go to the next slide. So we looked at areas that were the the areas that were flown, look at dates. The areas in red there obviously is that 2011 timeframe. So again, it's already 11 years old. And so that's a high priority. And then you go to the orange sections, the yellow sections, and the green sections. And as we get to the blues, those were more recently done. The one story I've got to tell you, every time this is a phone call, either to Shelby or to Chris or to some one of our partners about LiDAR, it seems like we seem to think about things about at the same time. I had Pam Cooper, who worked in my office at the time, call up FEMA because we had done some work with them on the 2016, see where they're looking at going. And so she called the rep there at FEMA in Dallas, and they said, well, we've got some funds that we are applying for, QL2 to areas that did not have QL2 at the time. And so they at first funded that southern section of the 2017. Then we got a call back from them a little bit later and says, we found more money. And so that's how we got the northern section. So it's all about timing a lot of ways. In ways you could say, hey, we hit the jackpot on this because, the need for LiDAR data or being able to do that would have been more difficult to get the funds. So, areas of interest for us, obviously, is this area right through here. Next slide. Then we looked at, okay, what is our practices that disturb the most? Where's our need from our agency standpoint? And it's the acres of land leveled areas and I know that this probably doesn't represent all because there's private landowners that do land leveling themselves. But we don't know the numbers there. We have our data. And so we looked at areas that, looked at counties where that land leveling occurred. So Cross County stuck out. The number doesn't show up really good, but 41,000 acres of land leveled cropland, just the cropland in there. So it's over 10% of the county of cropland, if you think of it that way, has some sort of leveling done on it. And so we were looking, that northeast corner is probably going to be our hotspot. We knew that. We just I needed to have information for our decision makers to say, hey, this is where we need to emphasize. So again, eastern Arkansas is going to show out for that. We do have areas over along the Red River and then in the Arkansas Valley that also has some, but it's not as big of a issue from that standpoint.
If I could, I see that Lawrence County is over 33,000 acres, but when I think about Lawrence County and half the county being upland in the Ozarks, then that's the other half of the county almost.
It is. When we were, and I'll get to our plan later, the other thing that we have known on working with LiDAR contractors is if we could get contiguous areas, that works the best. So we, joining counties we were looking at and other things. So that was one of the criteria that we also used. We want to look at blocks, big blocks. For us, counties work better because that's kind of our standard that we work with. We still work with that. Watersheds are great if we wanted to do a project, maybe that's QL1 or QL0. Maybe that's an emphasis in some area. But this is some data that we had available. So next slide. So this is how we developed our plan, and this is just a plan. And again, we only had a few days to develop this to get a priority in. There were some dollars nationally that was going to be available that we might be able to get in to pay for some of that. I don't think ours was selected this year. So Ours is, what we have is we're just gonna delay it a year, work with partners, talk to them, see where some needs are, and maybe redirect. But at first, what we're looking at is go ahead and cross in Crittenden's, that's ever adjoining, they have a lot of acres of land leveled, work up into the Mississippi green clay, work this area here, which is a heavy rice area. We know that there's a lot of land leveling going on in those areas. Then work down. You know, this area right here was flown in 2017. By the time we get there, 2029, it'll be that age. The areas in brown are areas that if there's money and there's interest, you know, that would be the next priorities. And then you get into the Ozark Islands and into the Ouachitas. You know, if there's interest, then yeah, we might have some, you know, that's maybe some things that we can, from our standpoint, fund. Some others may, you know, some others counties may go ahead and say, hey, we want to work on this, and that's fine. We'll see if we can partner with them too. So, but that's kind of our plan. And again, it's draft. I don't want to say that this is set in stone at all. We set some priorities, but it's basically on what we feel like is available and what looked feasible to do. And from the cost of LiDAR, looked like it was like $234 a square, is it by a square mile? I believe that's right. We were looking somewhere around that 400, 500,000, maybe $600,000 acquisition for QL2. The reason we did these smaller was because we knew we couldn't get in with partners, and we were looking at some year-end dollars, and that just didn't happen in time enough. So that's where we stand, and we're fortunate that we're still going to get that refresh of data on those areas that weren't up to 3 Dell. So I think next slide. And with that, you see those yellow areas on top of that. That's from the USGS there. What they're going to do for this season's flying, and that's how that fits in with ours. If there's, you know, if we hit an area that's been more recently done, well, we may not have, you know, do those areas and expand. You know, if there's more money available, you know, we'll have more counties to do. It's just a, you know, it's just a plan. So that's our contact information. I'll do a little bit better introduction of our staff a little bit. You know, over at NRCS, I'm the state soil scientist, and under my direction is our GIS office and our people there that work there. Nathan is our state GIS specialist now, and his contact information there, and he is a wonder to work with. He's keeps me in line and with what's possible. And so anytime y'all need to get a hold of us, the board, if we need to come and partner with any, or we need to sit down and say, hey, this is a priority for us or not, just let us know. So anyway.
I might suggest backing up a slide because I feel like the board might have some questions.
Mm-hmm. So this is not a question about your areas, which I do appreciate. This is a really clear map. I guess Nathan probably made some of these.
Nathan did, and this was actually, we stole this one from Chris.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. So this is an agricultural area. When we collect LiDAR, we want to see the ground. I flew LiDAR in December of 2020 for Mississippi, Craighead, part of Craighead, Poinsett and Cross, and I can tell you, in stripper header collected fields, you cannot see the ground.
Correct.
So when can you see the ground? You can see the ground when the fields are prepared for planting or have just been planted. It's not classic to say that May is leaf off, but it's probably the best month to see the ground.
You're correct on that, absolutely. And so, you know, maybe our areas are too big, I don't know. From what you're saying, they may be. But that's the focal point. It's not December through that, because you also have the issue of water on the ground,
That's
all
right.
that from ducks. And we had that issue a lot, especially when they're flying this. Some of these early collections, and from our agency standpoint, we didn't have very educated people on how to write contracts at the time. And it's been so good that we're working through the 3-DEP program where we got USGS having that standard so that everything is correct. But you're right on that. It is an issue with stubble on the ground, cover, corn, you know, from the previous year, on that on the ground. Yeah.
The end of April to beginning of May, that probably are drained fields unless you're right there at the cache, which seems to be flooded often in the late spring.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to state out loud, if, I know we just specify the phrase leaf off, and we may have more specification, you may give more specification. It could be preference to be as late as possible in the leaf off period, so the fields have drained.
Right.
So they've been prepared, because it would be kind of nice to see those levees sitting up there, because that is an infrastructure of human kind of change on the earth.
Sure. Absolutely. We've written that into contracts before, where we had our staff office out on the field, give them the okay, for instance. But you can't see everything. That's the deal.
Thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely.
Edgar,
May I make a comment on that as well?
Yes, Chris.
Hey, I was talking to Dr. Nolan last week about the same thing, and I think one of the biggest advantages to look for in terms of that is preparation time. It makes me think back to some of the 2017 collections when we actually had a working group that came together. It was coordinated by the Arkansas GIS office, and the point was just to identify concerns like that in terms of what are the priority areas and why do we need data there. And the earlier you can have those conversations, I think the better chance you have of identifying polygons that maybe fit the situation that John was talking about, where for ag production and specific timing. And when you put those types of maps together, showing specific areas with specific times of the year, that gives you something to present to the 3-DEP USGS commercial partnership team to say, if we had this situation, what kind of cost estimate are we looking at? As opposed to an entire block that you just say, we need it leaf off. So I think just having the conversation as early as possible will really help out with that situation.
Edgar, when you say partners, who do you guys actively, I guess, reach out to ask where?
We ask, in the past, we'll do as we have in the past, ask everybody. And this includes state agencies, it will be municipalities, it will be that, because this state has such a great partnership in the GIS area that that's where we'll see.
And then with Dr. John saying that he just had, you said Cross and Crittenton?
Well, I flew across Poinsett, Mississippi, and part of Craighead. The issue is, it wasn't a 3D DEP. I didn't have a specification that meets that quality standard. But I could still, in relative elevation sense, see where change had occurred, and I can help answer some of those questions about land leveling. And that's what I'm working on, and the cache in Langhee.
Well, that would be great.
So but it's so old.
Yeah.
So my newest data that I have from the government is 2011.
Right.
And I know that there at one time was an 8-year repeat goal, and that's probably not attainable under the current funding structure. But, you know, I don't know if there's a pathway for communication up the federal chain. We fly NAPE every 2 or 3 years, and those airplanes, I don't know, they could be outfitted with a LiDAR unit.
Yeah, you know, right now with, that's correct because they're already getting the pretty good resolution on the NAPE. You know, it's not
That's
what
leaf
you're gonna
on.
talk about, but
Yeah.
that's,
It's leaf on, so it's a
It
different
is.
season, but it's the same platform, you know.
Okay.
right.
Well, you know, I sent it to him earlier.
Okay.
Thanks.
Somebody's not muted.
But that makes, you know, a good point of, okay, maybe there is some collections out there that we didn't have. You've had some more recent experiences with, you know, issues. And so we can, that will help us out. But as far as partnering, if they're, again, this is a plan that we had to put together in a couple of days.
Sure.
And it's more of, okay, what do we think we can do and whatever. So one thing that we're gonna try to do is get our funding budgeted at the beginning for this, so that we know how much dollars we can put in. That way we can go to partners and say, hey, this is what we can do. And then that way we're not asking at the end of our fiscal year, which is now too late because we've got to get it into these USGS contract, the 3DEP, by July 15th for us.
Well, but that's a good amount of time for us to know.
Oh,
for that
absolutely.
next deadline, and maybe we can spend some time coordinating with you about areas that would be optimal.
Right, and so that may, I don't know how that coincides with state budgets and stuff.
The state fiscal year begins July 1.
Begins July 1, so you may not know exactly where your dollars need to go, or if you have extra dollars for a specific thing. But it may be like us, maybe we budget it ahead of time and get it a line item in there or something. I don't know how that may work, but.
And the same is also true for state agencies on occasion. At the end of the fiscal year, occasionally you'll have an opportunity where there's a program that didn't succeed in one area or another. And so in, you know, May or June, you're looking at unprogrammed dollars that you could be able to allocate to a partner maybe.
Well, it doesn't say that we don't have to contract this or get this in earlier. I mean, that's the deal. So that may work into our favor then. So,
I just have one more question that I'm
Sure.
curious about. So, you know, this lends itself to be similar, right, to aerial imagery. Do you guys ever see counties or cities that do their own contracts for LiDAR to have that as a local government resource? I mean,
Yeah.
Dr. John, you're doing it for educational purposes, but I just wonder if there's other activity going on that.
There has been in the past. I know that in Washington County have been very aggressive in getting LiDAR flown in their area, in those counties before. Hot Springs was we had somebody from Hot Springs or no? Hot Springs before has been put in funds for their part of the area. So, you know, I think there's gonna, if we go and talk to partners and go in these forums and say, hey, we need to re-up or redo some of these areas, I think they'll come out and look for that.
There's a lot of applications, and there's not one agency or one purpose.
Right.
And just like we use imagery, who uses imagery? Everybody uses imagery.
Right.
If you're gonna go somewhere, you're gonna look at Google Maps at what it looks like around
Right.
there. Well, LiDAR gives you information that imagery doesn't give you.
Well, and there's opportunities to buy up on some and maybe go to QL1 or QL0 on some areas that are specific to cities and stuff. For us, it's not a big deal. Boy, it's getting Louisiana, I found out that it's a big data hog, you know, on stuff. So having a whole state at QL1 probably is not necessary. There's probably areas out there that would be favorable.
Any more questions from the board?
Is there would 3DEP be the statewide standard for flying LiDAR? Was that what I would need to our agency flew the Village Creek State Park in 2011 specifically for a golf course development to generate topographic information. But it was an ancillary, requirement of our construction process. But if we would have known then that there was and we do this occasionally for other projects, I could make it a point to ask for 3-depth standards whenever we do this, so that way I can provide it to the board or to AGISO, and that way it can work its way to you. I believe that's how it worked its way to you in this case. Is through AGISO.
It is, and Chris maybe can answer more, but that's how, when we first started, we weren't on the 3-depth standards in the beginning either. But boy, having that in our back pocket and knowing that they have the QA over this stuff, instead of our staff doing QA over the LiDAR, they're doing it, and they have the people that can. And so, boy, it's been really a good partnership.
Yeah, there is a published spec out there that's available. I could also provide a task order for previous projects. If anybody wants to look at that, how it's spelled out as far as acquisition conditions and deliverables. And if someone collects their own LiDAR, we also have a contributed data process by which we hope that they would follow the 3-depth spec and then eventually get it to USGS to QA and ultimately become part of the 3-depth holdings.
Well, Chris and Edgar, this was very interesting and really very timely, in my opinion, to hear about this. We appreciate it, and we hope that you and Nathan, and of course you, Chris, are going to be coming to our next state GIS conference up in Jonesboro, 2023, October of next year. I think a wider audience needs to hear about all of this.
Maybe we'll have a start of our plan by then.
Yeah.
So very good.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks.
Shelby, are you ready to hop into agency report?
Sure. We provided the report for the agency or the office in advance to the board. Thought I'd just hit a couple of highlights in the report from the advanced material. Of course, your state GIS platform continues to tick off and perform and deliver data. The boundaries and parcels continues to lead the top 5 products in terms of utilization. It's coincidental, but imagery, the 2017 imagery at year to date is at 65 million views, and that's 2017. So now a little bit out of date, but still very effective and used a lot. Plat filing continues to truck right along, and it's on record pace for the year. The plats continue to roll in, and we think that's continuing to be a function of the hot real estate market. Our corner restoration budget is at increased this year. It increased to $80,000, and we are at 1/3 of that funding that has been invested in restoring and perpetuating the PLSS corners. The Division of Land Surveys has a focus on county boundaries, priority corners in deficient counties, which they most recently identified a group or a set of counties that are deficient and are focusing on investing in restoring those corners, and then the other focus being on corners that are coincident with tying down county boundaries. Staffing update. Our truck, the truck update. Thank you, board, for allowing us to move forward with that procurement. And so that's been procured and is now in service. The old truck, I believe it was in excess of 170,000 miles on the old truck. 177,000 miles. So it had served us well and served the state well, but it was time to upgrade. That's just an update on that corner work there. On our staffing, I think we introduced Melissa Walker, our newest analyst, at the last meeting, but for those of you who weren't there, Melissa's with us today. And then we've got a new 911 contractor that'll be starting later this month. On our outreach front, most recently we've had coordination activities with the Association of Counties. We attended the Arkansas Emergency Management Conference. Melissa and Jonathan on staff attended the Mid-America GIS Clearinghouse Summit, which was held in Iowa, I believe, and that was with the states that are in the Mid-Continent region who do the same kind of work that we do in their states, and so good opportunity to coordinate there. In the near term, we'll be attending several of us will be attending the National States Geographic Information Council meeting. And we've also had the county judges meeting that'll be coming up here in September. I'm excited to tell you, we've mentioned this to the board before, but it's a real honor for Arkansas. At this upcoming NSGIC meeting, Jonathan will be blessed, if you will, as the new chair or new president of the national organization. And so he will take over and lead that national organization. So it's nice to have Arkansas's leadership continuing forward. But that's kind of all of the highlights. I forgot. Jonathan was invited to come to Louisiana and coordinate with the state of Louisiana and their state GIS council. An opportunity to share with them how we coordinate here in Arkansas and how they coordinate there in Louisiana. So that was another recent event that he was able to make. So that's pretty much the highlights of all of our report.
Anybody have any questions for Shelby? So 6 participants going to NSGIC. Can you share who?
Jonathan, myself, Matt, Scott Osberg from Department of Health.
And 2 from DIS. So Robert Magoo and Heather Seiko.
Yeah.
Excellent.
From DIS. As well.
They're, Robert and Heather are in the Chief Data Officer branch, and so they're focused on open data kinds of initiatives, and of course GIS being a very big part of that, so they're attending that meeting.
Let's move on to old business if we're ready.
The GIS office continues to support the Next Generation 911 project and its implementation. We have nearly all of the analyst level staff are focused on that effort. A lot of data preparation, data coordination with cities and counties, most particularly counties that are early in the conversion process and switching over to the next generation IP network for routing 911 calls. And I believe the status meeting yesterday, I believe it's something on the order of 16 to 18 counties that have moved over to what's called the EZNet, or the Public Safety Network. We still don't have full geospatial call routing yet, but the county that's closest is Benton. They are almost in that category where GIS is actually driving 911 call routing. They were an early adopter and also very successful. Of course, you learned about this at the last board meeting, but we continue to invest a lot of staff time in that work supporting that. The next update for old business is the Searcy County Tax Parcel Mapping Project. And that project is continuing to progress forward. The provider sent us a status update since our last board meeting. They've added additional parcel mapping that they completed there, so that's coming along. Also under old business, the statewide orthoimagery, which will also be news business, so I won't spend any time there. And then the land survey truck procurement, which you saw a picture of. So that's kind of the highlights of actions that we've executed on since your last board meeting in Bentonville.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions on old business for Shelby? All right, let's move on to new business.
Sharon, if I could interrupt you just for a second
Of
before we
course.
get into that. I'm going to have to step out, so Jennifer's stepping in for me. I've got to actually, ironically, have a NSGIC call I have to be on at 11 o'clock. So.
That's going to happen more and more often, Jonathan. Yeah. Well, thank you, Jennifer. All right.
Proceed?
Proceed.
Okay. As you know, we discussed this briefly at the last board meeting, but we have kept and been able to maintain our contract with Sanborn Map Company. And of course, they're dialed in today to be able to support the board and answer questions. I forget the time frame. My memory is dim on this, but earlier this year we were able to announce to you that the governor had provided funding to be able to update the state's imagery. And because we maintain that contract, the funding that we receive is in excess of the statewide coverage for 1 foot. And that leaves a balance of funds remaining. And so we had put together a preliminary plan for you that would outline some potential areas where we could potentially buy up with blocks of coverage that would be covered at 6-inch resolution, which is significantly better than the 1 foot resolution. As we began to do that, we were aware that other locations had updated imagery since 2017. However, we hadn't done a proactive data call to go and pull those data into the platform so that we knew where all those were taking place. And so through some follow-ups and some additional correspondence, we were able to send you out some updated information that indicated areas where counties had on their own flown additional coverage. And so that additional coverage being flown kind of is an indicator where the market has ripened and has been able to invest on their own in procuring imagery. Now, these areas that we're showing aren't necessarily 6-inch coverage. They may be 1 foot, 9-inch, with some areas that are 6-inch. But it's indicative of newer, more current information. So we went ahead and put together this graphic here. The framework that you see underneath is the quarter quad framework, which is our planning unit. That's the unit we are using for planning purposes. The green areas are areas where we have or will see recent or future 2023 coverage by Eagle Forestry or EFS Geotechnologies. And then the yellowish areas are representative of areas that were either acquired in 2022 or programmed for 2023 by Eagle View. And so after we began to look at this, we realized that the proposed areas that we propose may need to be modified, or you might scrap them altogether. You might look at some other area of the state and put an emphasis on some other area of the state. So this is maybe not the best map in the world, but we did provide a handout for you to study at your desk that shows you basically what those two sets of areas look like, and then the holes that are in between. Our programming was we went back and looked at the 6-inch buy-up option areas that we proposed to the board in 2017, and then we excluded all of the 6-inch, and then went essentially back to those. So we had a Northeast Arkansas area, a Northwest Arkansas area, a River Valley area, a Southwest Arkansas area, and then a Southeast Arkansas area that we outlined. And so with that, I'll just at this point, I think probably the best thing to do is just for me to if there are questions, I'll try to answer those. But let the board give us some discussion and guidance.
So Shelby, my first question is with the EFS and the Eagle View imagery that was flown, I'm assuming that however the counties paid for that or what was the contract for it, that may or may not be available to share with the state on ASTI for public viewing, right?
That's correct. We didn't have that discussion with those providers. We just asked what was their coverage. We didn't ask if that information is shareable with the state. That's certainly a follow-on question that we could have. We kind of have the sense, at least from EFS in the past, that they have contributed their county level imagery to the statewide platform, and we just haven't done that data call because our time of late was invested for the last 2 years in COVID and 911 and redistricting, and so we think that with the suspect that with the Eagle View, it probably is under some sort of a license that's particular to that prospective county or city, and so we haven't had that conversation yet.
And they're, the blue colored counties, is that full coverage in the counties, the whole county covered, or is that just selected areas within that county?
So for example, the River Valley option,
Not the dark blue, the EFS.
Those are complete counties. They're programmed, they're planned for complete county coverage. And they, I believe I'm correct in that they cover those at 9-inch resolution. And then occasionally they'll come back and cover, I'm going to use Arkansas County as an example. They'd cover the whole county at the 9-inch, and then they might come back and capture Stuttgart at 6. And we didn't go to the level of municipal collections to figure out where all they might have acquired that. So we don't know the answer to that.
And some of it's going to be even higher, because I know that some of the more recent that we just got was like 6-inch and then 3-inch at the city. So from Eagle View.
So we also have this question about a larger area at a lower resolution, the cost comparison to a smaller area at a higher resolution. Like 6 inches is what we've been talking about, but there are other resolutions, the 3 to 4 kind of range. And that 9 range, I'm interested in that talk when we talk with Sanborn. The prices for that 9 range on this sheet that we have in front of us look better than the 1 foot cost. So maybe somebody can correct my math there.
So we had a conversation with Sanborn, and John and Jason are on, and they might want to respond here. But basically, what they did was if you look at your price sheet from the 2017 procurement, and you go to the I'll have to navigate to the correct page.
Second to last
The statewide acquisition, that is at the 1 foot. That is on table 1 of page 2. That's the 1 foot. If you go to table 2, which is the second to last page, and you look at the 4th line down, that imagery acquisition for 6-inch that was done in 2017, covering that sort of north-central corridor, the Highway 167 corridor is kind of what we called that. We were acquiring that at $71.26 a square mile. And that the requirement there was that we cover at least 1,000 square mile area that was contiguous. And so the board would be under the same requirements this time, relatively contiguous, relatively compact, at $71.26 a square mile for if we wanted to acquire 6-inch. Sanborn came back and provided a supplemental pricing sheet for 9-inch, and that 9-inch acquisition, if you look, there's the most favorable rate on there would be a contiguous area of 10,000 square miles, and that would be at $30 a square mile for 9-inch.
When we're talking about like the 9-inch or even the 6-inch, they're calling it is that 2 flights? One's, like, that's what happened last time, right? There was ones at 1 foot and there was another flight at
Yes.
9 or 6. Is there any reason why we do that? Like, instead of doing it, like, if you're gonna do it twice, just do it once at the better resolution than twice. I mean, I know it's not as seamless for the 1 foot, but
Well, I can't speak for, I hate to speak for Sanborn, but just my awareness of the project last time as it unfolded in 2017, it's all functions of weather and where they have their asset. And so on day one, it might be cloudy in northwest Arkansas as an event's coming through, so you move that aircraft and asset to southeast Arkansas where it's not cloudy and you get work done. And so those flight lines in the 2017 project were organized from north to south, south to north, straight lines, and you get on the line and you fly as much as you can. So it effectively became 2 different mission plans once the board came back with the 6-inch area. And so they scoped out an entirely different mission plan, and they flew at a lower altitude to get that resolution. So I think it would be challenging logistically. I'm sure it's not impossible, but logistically I think it would be challenging to fly and then at a 6-inch and then
skip the area for the
right, or resample up to 12. And then it depends on what area the board scopes out to. But that's certainly a project management discussion that can happen. Now let me make sure I'm clear. Are you asking that for, let's just say that you chose Miller County, or if the board chose Miller County, are you saying don't fly Miller County at 1 foot at all?
and just fly it at the 6-inch or something.
Okay.
And if that saves you money so that you can fly more at a 6-inch, that just seems to make sense. And I have several devil's advocate questions, but we'll do one at a time.
So
They're related to this.
So if we go to this, right, let's just imagine, I know the price for 1 foot for the whole state is about $1 million. So that gives us about 250,000 over that, okay? If you take let's say it costs us the whole amount, 1,000 or 1,250,000 to fly 1 foot, and divided it by the number of square miles in the state, that puts us at about $22 a square mile. That $30 is very close, such that we may actually just say no 6-inch and fly the whole state at 9-inch. Is there a way we could, negotiate that for what, that rate?
Well, it'd be subject to the availability of funds, and if I did my math right, then we don't have enough funds to do 9-inch statewide. There's another factor that I don't know all of the board is aware of. Let me bring that to your attention. In state statute, in I don't remember if it's in rules or if it's in statute, but I think it is in rules adopted by Department of Finance and Administration. Photographic services of any kind are subject to sales tax. And that means that we actually pay sales tax on the imagery acquisition from the aircraft. So that means we must split up the procurement between the image acquisition and then data processing. And so the data processing piece is the bigger expense, and by splitting that up, we're able to avoid that, paying sales tax on that data processing. So that photographic services of any kind being subject to sales tax would apply to any image acquisition, whether it be 3-inch, 6-inch, 9-inch, 12-inch, regardless. So that's a little bit of extra math that has to get factored in there.
Shelby, what's the agency's level of comfortability with our timeline, right? I mean, board, if you'll remember, we didn't know about this till June. That's a quick turnaround time. you know, for our leaf off season to fly, right? But what is the agency's level of comfortability to extend a question out to your fellow state agencies to ask for additional funding for this project to possibly, maybe achieve a higher resolution?
We're pretty comfortable, and the reason is twofold. You may recall last time in 2017, we were very late in the planning process. We were late in that planning process and that 6-inch outreach. I think we had that meeting in Batesville like in October or November with those partner counties in that part of the state. And so then the cooperative agreements to put in place to bring in those partner dollars, that was pretty late in the process. And Sanborn also was pretty late in that process as well with mission planning. This time around, the mission plan effectively is the same. We've got our provider who's already done the whole state, who has a mission plan already built. We've had a kickoff meeting with them already to discuss, you know, effectively the same mission plan. And so, if you, for example, swapped up to say 9, then you're still running with the same project blocks. You're still running with the same, a lot of the same mission planning. All you're doing is adding in additional flight lines potentially. So as far as us being able to have that time to coordinate and outreach with our colleagues in the other departments and the other offices and divisions, we feel fairly comfortable about being able to do that, to potentially be able to buy up for additional coverage. I think probably we probably wouldn't want to let that run too far past say October, November timeframe. But given that we're early September, that gives us all of September and October, and then we cut it off at November timeframe.
With the processing cost, do you think that we would be able to figure out a, you know, hey, if we get this much, we could do this to present to, or maybe would this just be, hey, we're going to do this and we'd like to know if
Yeah.
you would like to
So in the 6-inch option, if you would let your eyes look at those 6-inch option proposed areas that we proposed, those are about 3,200 square miles. So each of those, we've already sort of gamed out the amount of square mileage. And each one of those they're not all exactly 3,200 square miles, but they're all in that same ballpark. So those, the purple, the green, the blue, the red, gives you a sense of what kind of scope you might be able to cover with the dollars that we have now. And so any additional partner funding just adds to that size.
So, one of my devil's advocate questions that I've kind of broached before with some folks. If there are counties already contracted to fly in 2023, especially if, and we don't know enough information yet, but if that's 6-inch or better, or even 1 foot or better, can we just not fly them and save any money? I mean, we're looking at 40% of the state has been flown in 2022 or is going to be flown in 2023. And I know that there's at least a couple missing off that. So we're getting up close to 50% of the state has already flown in the last 12 months, or will have been at that point, at maybe 6 inches or better. Again, we don't know, we can do some research, but let's say it is. Can we just not fly that and just fly the other 50% and potentially even fly that 50% at 6 inches, the whole state? Or so the whole state would have 6-inch coverage over the course of 12 months.
So I think that's a worthwhile question, and I cannot answer on the price piece. I can't answer that. That's a question that would be for John or Jason. But I can answer, or I can make this remark. It would be to the benefit of the state to be able to do that if the information becomes public domain,
Right.
and it's available to Game and Fish, it's available to higher ed for academic research, cities, counties, economic developers, parks, RDOT, all of the departments that could leverage that for carrying out the missions that are carried out by the various state departments.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a very important piece that should bear on your minds, is that you if you're going to have that higher level of resolution, it's to the benefit of the state to be able to access all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had broached some of this with Eagle View, and I think they're willing to have that conversation. I can't speak for them in any way, except that they're willing to have the conversation. And typically, they're a little bit more willing on the oblique imagery, or not the oblique, the orthos than the obliques. So that could be feasible. It just has to be a discussion.
So I'll just interject then and ask John or Jason. Jennifer, can you go back to the Zoom?
I'm trying to find it.
Okay.
I keep looking on it, it's not there.
It could be on another screen. It might help if you just stop your screen share. But I'll go ahead and ask, and hopefully they can hear and respond. So this would be a question for John or Jason. If, for example, the board chose that knew that there were 3 counties that were going to be acquiring imagery on their own, could we alter a mission plan to exclude those counties and still be able to collect and acquire at the same price rate?
The question's been asked a couple different ways, and I'll respond to it, shall we? The pricing in the contract, when we priced it for 1 foot, assumed that the entire state was flown at 1 foot. The reason for that is you can't just take the airplane and go up and down, in altitude, because the altitude controls the resolution. So you can't just be flying along and drop down 5,000 feet. It doesn't work. It is efficient to fly at an altitude back and forth in long lines. And I think if you remember our flight plans from before, since we didn't have all the 6-inch nailed down in large blocks, we chose to fly the whole state at 1 foot because that was the most efficient, and then come back and get the 6-inch. If we had large blocks of 6-inch identified up front, we could fly the 6-inch and then fly the 12-inch and not duplicate the 12-inch over the 6-inch areas. Like you're talking about 3,000 square miles, large areas. Because just to try to do that with a 250 square mile area or a 500 square mile area doesn't get you anything. It isn't big enough to really save any money. You're actually spending more from a provider standpoint to try to fly like that. But if we have large areas, like you shown on the map, where you have 3,000 square miles, we could not duplicate the flight over those areas and simply reprocess. We could process it to 6-inch for the 6-inch area and then process it to 12-inch, so you had consistent 12-inch coverage for the whole state. If that makes sense to you, hopefully the way I described it does. To just cut out a small county, there's no way to deal with that. I mean, the plane's gonna get across the small county faster than we can turn. Because every time you interject a break in the collection plan, that means you're adding a turn of the airplane to not collect that part. and every turn takes 3 or 4 minutes to turn the airplane around and go back the other way. The more turns you add, the more efficient the whole thing is. That's why, again, we typically plan it in large blocks with lots of long straight lines, because that's the most efficient way to collect it. And that's how we price the statewide 12-inch. But we're, again, like I said, we have a big area of 6-inch that's known in advance, so we can, plan that into our coverage up front. We could accommodate not flying it twice and just resampling from a 6 to a 12, so you get consistent 12-inch coverage and you get the 6-inch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
But from saying that, it sounds like some of these big gigantic blocks that are already flown. I mean, look at Pope, Yale, Logan, Johnson, Franklin, Sebastian, Crawford, Washington, Benton. That's a gigantic block. If we weren't, that would be kind of what he was saying. We're talking about a lot more than 3,000 square miles, and so they could not fly that. But if we're talking about like Calhoun County sitting out there by itself, that would probably not be worthwhile enough.
Right.
You could grab 3 counties on the west side and fill in that block, you cut out a whole series of lines going up down there.
Yeah, and another issue that to look at on the map, as it was shown, is that we're dealing with straight lines. And so where a county is this, jagged, irregular shaped county, it makes it just about impossible to not have to fly it twice.
Yeah.
The big blocks where they're square work.
Yeah, and that's why in the preliminary planning that we sent you, we use the quarter quads as the planning unit, because those are boxes and rectangles.
Yep, and that's a great way to do it.
So we don't know if we have access to EFS and Eagle View. We think it may be more likely we have access to EFS and just don't know about Eagle View. Is that what I heard you say? If this all exists at sub-foot and we have access to it, maybe it really is dependent upon our access.
Yeah, I guess from what I'm hearing, Shelby, maybe the board has a couple of decisions to make, maybe more than a couple. One is a statewide flight, versus a patchwork of different imagery coming in, right? I think that's gonna be a decision that we're gonna have to make. And then, of course, areas for some higher resolution. And the possibility that if there are partners from other agencies that want to donate, if we do a statewide flight, do we do it at a 9-inch possible resolution?
I might also mention that if there is a follow-on and it's necessary, the board could call a special meeting in October or even November. I guess would be a little bit late, but if you felt like you needed a little bit of additional information or wanted to guide us in another direction to say, can you come up with a planning block of some other area, we could do that fairly quickly and then get that information to you, and then possibly you could convene a special meeting.
Board, I don't see how we're not going to not have a special, we're gonna have a special meeting.
I'm fine with that.
And so Shelby, I also wonder, and maybe this is a question for Sanborn too, so from my point of view, if something were to go to my agency to ask for some partnering funding for this, I think that my agency would wanna see, okay, here's statewide cost for 1 foot, statewide cost for 9-inch, statewide cost for 6-inch, just so they can see. And of course,
a comparative.
Yeah, and
Right.
of course, current funding. If you guys can't tell, I'm a big fan of a statewide flight, no matter what. I love a statewide flight.
I mean, for every reason, I'm with.
Right, but I also understand you know, saving, the possibility of saving funds and, you know, doing some patchwork. I mean, I get that.
And I think it's worthwhile to mention the one thing that's in the board's DNA is the desire to avoid duplicating effort.
Yep.
That's in
Yes.
your DNA.
Absolutely.
And so we wrestle with this ourselves about not duplicating effort, so.
Well, are we really duplicating efforts if we don't have access to everything that's in the blue right here, because, or everything that's in that teal color? Because that would be my next question, is logistically, if we had all that and knew that whoever was gonna put that together, I don't know if your office would piece that mosaic together if you did get all the EFS data from each county, or if that's something we'd have to have Sanborn or somebody integrate into a full mosaic of the whole entire state. But without knowing if we're actually gonna have that, it's hard to say, let's not do it on our statewide project, you know, in hopes that we're gonna be able to get that Sunday. I'd rather get the full statewide.
But I think also in our DNA is the fact that we want to make sure that it's shareable to everyone.
Yes.
Not just state agencies or higher ed. I want it to be available to anybody.
Well, I think that's what we've said is one of the very first
Yeah.
questions. We just need to find out if it's available. And if it's not, then that's, you know, this is not a question. So
That's, I mean,
it's
that's
just
true,
a,
but it's, I mean, back in 2016, those were those discussions, you know, do we do imagery as a service and it's only available to these, you know, sectors?
and I think we're all in agreement that whatever happens here, we need a statewide imagery set
Yeah.
that is available to everybody. And so the very first question is just calling those vendors and finding out.
If I can interject, gentleman raised I don't know who it was, raised a good point. When you try to patch imagery together, typically it doesn't come out well. The reason it doesn't is because it was flown at different resolutions with different degrees of accuracy. And so you get to a boundary and the roads don't line up and the fences don't line up. And there's almost nothing you can do to make them line up.
At the same time, if we can save enough money that they're all 6 inches, I'd rather have 6 inches across the board that slightly don't line up in a few areas
Yeah,
than 12 inches everywhere.
Yeah, see, we fly, I mean, all of our pricing that we've given you and what we do across the country with everybody is we fly to a resolution that enables us, with control, that enables us to produce an ASPRS class 1 ortho. That means the accuracy, the absolute accuracy of any point in the ground is within 2 pixels. So if it's 3-inch imagery, it's got 6-inch absolute accuracy. If it's 6-inch imagery, it's got 12-inch. If it's 12-inch, it's got 24-inch absolute accuracy. When you start trying to integrate other people's imagery, if they didn't fly it to that same specification, that same ASPRS requirement, it's virtually impossible to make things line up. And so that's just another thing to be aware of.
Beth, did you have something?
I have 2 things from the assessor's perspective. We, in my county, we try to fly during the 5-year reappraisal cycle. My county has actually been flown by EFS. We did it in 3 years during our process, but because they were different sections of the county, it's not public. It's for my office only.
I see.
So that may be a reason why you have a lot of these different counties, because there's not a rotating cycle currently with the state. That's why they have these proposals. I think I answered both in the same one, but personally.
And Shelby, I believe you have a 12-inch statewide price and a 9-inch statewide price, and if you want a 6-inch statewide price, we can provide that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So for the 9-inch, we would be doing $30 times 56,010 square miles. Is that gonna be our 9-inch price?
Yes.
Okay.
eight,
1.68.
and then 300. That's not right. Yeah.
But that's without tax, that's the before tax.
This is, well, that's, yes, well, and that's the full meal deal, it doesn't.
So that's $400,000 more for
Well, it's
9-inch.
2/3 of that looks like the actual image acquisition cost, and 1/3 looks about like the processing cost, if I understand what's taxable. So 2/3 of this would be taxable. I don't know the rate.
So, next steps, would that be, I guess, for your office, or do we need like a committee to deal with some of this, or what's the process? I guess it's y'all been dealing with it, so I'm all for handing off.
Can I get a clarification? Are we talking about, is the question, I mean, we want to get statewide coverage no matter what. Is the question that we're trading, we were talking about trading 86-inch for statewide 9-inch? Is that what we're saying? That we would no longer do a 6-inch fly, we would only do a statewide 9-inch fly?
Well, you never take all the money.
I think that's an option. It's definitely an option.
I think we don't know what our options are yet. So part of it is that we need somebody to contact EFS and Eagle View and just say, hey, is the imagery available, or can you make it available, right? Because that answers one question. Because if they say no, then that's not even a question anymore about, we don't care who has existing. I know EFS, it's all in public domain typically, right? Or, well, I guess that's at the behest of the assessor's office, because give it to y'all. But typically,
I don't
like.
think it's all public. I don't think it's all public.
So
They have a license for the assessor's office, is that how that works? Kind of like Eagle View does?
I just know the way it was explained to me was it was flown in 3 different years, and they'd have to put it all together, and they were willing to do that for my office only, not the public.
I wonder if the the original imagery was public, but not the process. Well, again, that's just a question that somebody needs to.
Right, because our proposal, I mean, when we looked at 6-inch, we all had the River Valley, because we picked up more of our WMAs that we don't currently have at 6-inch. But if we have access to that information, then suddenly our look's gonna be a little different.
So one question is just plain, is it available or not, from the 2 vendors, primary vendors? Benton has a different vendor, right? They use that other imagery company. And so that at least leads us on to what our options are after that. And that is seeing if we take that out, if that even affects our price, if Sanborn's willing to do something without that. And then we decide if we're willing to do that ourselves, whether it makes any sense to do it. Because the goal there would be to take out 40%, 40+% of the counties, hopefully have some more money available to buy up the rest of the counties, right? That'd be an option, if that's even possible.
I guess putting my state hat on here and thinking in terms of advocating for my colleagues in the various state agencies, I think whether those images are available or not is not the right question. And I think the reason is because they would have been acquired by 2 different providers, 2 different seasons, 2 different potentially altitudes, potentially in 2019, potentially in 22, 23. So you've got if you avoided those in a statewide acquisition, then you've got an inconsistency in your statewide view. At least if you, at minimum, cover the state with 1 acquisition, you've got a consistent look from a single season, single flyer, same spec. So I think that, to me, makes more sense. To whether those are available or not to other state agencies may not be a big factor in your decision making about where you might want to go with higher resolution.
So it'd be preferable to have
Shelby, you're hitting on a good point. Now, I don't know about EFS, we haven't integrated their imagery before. But Eagle View imagery is in a proprietary format. And you can, in an ARC environment, you can look at both two different formats at the same time, but you can't really produce a mosaic of Eagle View imagery with anything else.
Yeah, that's
Because of the
true.
proprietary format.
We get their data all the time and create mosaics from it. So almost every single one of these counties that are Eagle View, we've created our own mosaics from it. And they also often put it into the public domain. Washington County has it in their contract with them that's in the public domain, and Garland County had as well.
Yeah, you could produce a mosaic of Eagle View imagery with ARC or something else. It's just when you start trying to mosaic it with other things that you can run into an issue.
I want a point of clarification on the map. The areas that are not white and also not a color, what do those areas represent? It's basically just aerial imagery.
So, this is aerial, this is what we call high resolution aerial imagery. It's higher than 1 foot. So nearly everything you're looking at here is 6 inch that we've added to what we call our high resolution image service. You'll see some specs which represent cities that acquired higher resolution.
So that's already flown.
It's flown.
That you own and have
That's a
rights
service
to.
out there now.
Yeah,
So
it's
there's
just-
really 3 classes of stuff here. We don't know the status of 2 of the classes, but we could, there's value in having one flight because it's the same season and the same platform. That's a kind of value. There's value in flying the counties that, and having 6 inch everywhere. That's one kind of value. So we really need to kind of.
Well, it's real important from our standpoint of some of the products we put out that those lines and those roads and they all match. Because when our constituents zoom in, and trust me, they zoom in.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, and we got this guy saying, no, that's not how the river ran. Yeah, it did, it ran away.
Yeah, there's value in definitely one collect.
Yeah.
It was just interesting to see the difference in prices there. If 2/3 of the price is taxable, it looks like a 9 inch would be, after tax, 1.78 or so. So that's a lot bigger difference. I mean, how much do we have in excess of what we expect?
The funding we have available currently is 1.2 million.
And then what do we expect the percentage of that to be taken up by the 1 foot flight?
970.
And is that with the tax already included?
Mhm.
Okay, so we're at 0.3 and there's really not enough there to go.
If the board directed us to,
Yes, they reach out to partners. So Shelby, I don't know if you remember the number from the 2017. Do you remember how much you got from partnering agencies?
I don't remember the exact number, but I know that RDOT participated in it cooperatively, Department of Health participated cooperatively, Economic Development participated. And I want to say we were in the range of an additional 200 to 250K that was
This looks like
It's
500.
500, yeah.
And I also want to say, so Shelby at that time sent out a wonderful email explaining, here's why, and here's what we need. I think that something similar could be done with these hardcore numbers to say, and so maybe there could just be some more, and maybe there can be a condition of, hey, we really want to stretch for this goal, whatever goal the board decides, right? And if we don't get enough commitment towards that goal, then okay.
We can fall back to 12 inch.
Right,
Yeah.
so, but I really want us to, I
Yeah.
think it'd be great to try for this 9 inch statewide.
Do we lose the overage there if we don't spend it on this collect?
No.
Okay, is it in a carry forward account?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a good question. I should have thought of that sooner.
Yeah, to me, let's just find out if we could partner with somebody else But let's also find out if these people are gonna share with the state, we're gonna have to deal with that if they will anyway.
Regardless.
Or everyone, if they would make it open.
Because that's really just bearing to me on my decision on where the additional money would be spent for 6 inch.
Right, because regardless of whether they want to share or not, we still want statewide consistent coverage at some resolution, period.
So that's a
Whether it's
decision,
9 or
that'll
12.
be a decision that we'll vote on.
Okay.
I'm proposing that, you're right, we want statewide no matter what, but how is it gonna be? One, is it gonna be single flight, or we're gonna, you know
Well,
what I'm
yeah, I
saying.
think I'm proposing that we want a consistent single flight at some
Right.
resolution regardless, because
Right.
it sounds like logistically, they can't skip spaces to come back and make it 6 inches.
Which I think will be part of a larger discussion,
Um,
and a motion and some.
It occurs to me that I did not furnish you with some additional information that I should have at the very outset. Thing one, orthoimagery's been part of your strategic plan since 2010, and has remained as part of your strategic plan since then. We have asked every budget cycle for one-time funding for orthoimagery, and we were funded in 17, not funded in the subsequent years, and then funded in this current year. We have also in previous years asked to have sustainable funding put in place so that you would have a recurring program that acquired a third or a fourth of the state each year that would be in a rotational cycle. We have asked for that again for this legislative session that would come up in 2023. There's our track record hasn't been very good with getting that sustainable funding in, but I wanted you to be aware that we have asked for that, to put that into the budget as a line item that we would have going forward each year, so you'd have that rotational opportunity. The wise planner says bird in the hand is better than two in the bush, and so plan for what you have now. But I wanted to make you aware of that other longer range planning that we had been doing.
Is our decision about this winter, 22,
Yes.
23?
Yes. So it's
we have to come to a decision.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We sure do.
Also, this is all about subfoot. So it's hard to stitch. We have all these problems with it, but subfoot imagery of some kind, 6 inch, 3 inch, 9 inch. We know we want it. Do we have to specify, could we make a kind of motion that would have if-then statements in it?
We can.
So, if we can partner with other agencies to acquire enough money by the right time to do 9 inch, yes, else do 12 inch, could that be a type of a, and then we still have to, at that point, decide where to fly 6 inch, and it's probably in the gaps. And does that seem like a reasonable thing, not to collect something that's already collected, so we have to know if we have access to this before we make a decision on where to fly the extra 6 inch?
Yes.
It could be a separate motion.
Yes.
All right. So that seems like it's gonna have to be tabled till we find out the 6 inch.
I think so, before we find out from EFS and Eagle View if it's shareable.
So I would make a motion. Am I early enough to make, am I too late to make? Do you wanna talk about it more?
I don't see any harm in making a motion, especially since there'll be discussion to follow
Okay.
said motion, so we can discuss before we vote. We don't have to,
So I'd like to make a motion that we fly one collect statewide. If we can partner with other agencies, I think it's legitimately, the highest resolution we can expect would be 9 inches. If we can't, we fly the whole state at 12 inches. And so that will encumber funds based on what we can acquire. And then we'll have to work after we act on that for what follows.
Second.
Do you want to be that specific? I'm only asking because if there's still discussion, that if you're still asking some questions, we want to, I've already made a motion that we're doing that. just in case, like maybe somebody's gonna give us $1 million and we'll do 6 inches, but we just said the
Okay,
best we do is
we
9.
can say,
So-
how can we reword that statement, that motion to not be so specific? We can say, after partnering.
After exploring additional funding, if funds are not available to fly state at a higher resolution, then we would move to fly at a 12-foot.
Yeah, or we could even just say the
12
highest
inch.
resolution
12
we have
inches.
for the,
12
we can for the money we have.
So I guess my question is, you know, first, do we want to schedule a planned meeting first before we move forward voting on any motions to just hammer out, and soon? I mean,
Time.
soon.
Yeah,
I mean,
time. I mean, we have time to do that.
When do you need
That's-
that?
we have a little bit of time.
When's the drop dead date for when we have to decide this?
John, did you hear that question?
Yes, I heard it. You know, to be fair, it depends on how complex you want to make this. You know, the drop dead date, just to do a 12-inch statewide collection, as you already said, Shelby, there's already a plan, everything's there. If that's all we're doing, then, you know, we can go quite a while. I mean, we'll probably want to fly in January, so I would say, you know, November-ish. If we're gonna try to patchwork this thing, then that's gonna take a lot of time and planning, and I would say we would need to get started on it, you know, by the 1st of October. And just realize patchworking it changes the pricing because the area sizes are different.
How soon would you need to know for a 9-inch statewide?
Probably November, same time frame. Cranking out a statewide flight plan is not that difficult. So.
John, would it be possible from Sanborn to get a total estimated project cost for that 9-inch instead of us doing the math ourselves?
Yeah.
Okay.
With
taxes, yes.
Might as well look at 6.
Yeah.
Might as well go ahead and look at 6.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, 6 or 9-inch and 6-inch, please.
Okay, we'll do it.
And I want to ask one question that we've never stated out loud, and it doesn't use this term in your entire work. This is vertical ortho, not oblique, correct?
Correct. This is nadir imagery,
Yeah, okay.
not obliques. We have given you guys some oblique pricing, but you know, we do the same thing as Eagleview does. We've done it for Benton, the county of Benton, a few times now. But no, this is nadir 4-band imagery, not 3-band. So it's red, blue, green, and near infrared.
Leaf off.
So board, also just to follow protocol, we do have a motion on the table. We do have a second. Do I hear a motion to table said motion? Do I need to do that?
Or they can rescind.
Okay.
I'll rescind the motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Need your second,
Okay.
need to rescind her.
I rescind mine as well.
Okay, we're gonna need to meet soon, and, you know, special called meeting, of course. More than likely, it will be virtual. I am certainly open to meeting in person.
What are the action items that,
So-
yeah, 'cause how long
Okay,
is it
so,
gonna take?
all right, so I'm sorry, Shelby.
Well, just to follow on with Darren's train of thought, our specific action item that we've already got is to contact the 2 providers that are already out there and determine that availability and accessibility. My request to the board is, do you have, if we were to come back and bring you a 6-inch design, is there any preference among the board already from any of the regions that we've covered? In other words, so we don't waste time or spend a lot of time spinning our wheels for an area that none of you would vote for. Can you give us some guidance there so that we could, wisely use our time in looking at the 6-inch?
So each of these areas, each one would use up the remaining funds based on the 12-inch.
That was our design goal, yes.
So it really depends on if we have access to this, right?
Well, more than just access and then
Public
availability.
availability.
Public availability, and the ability to stitch it together somehow to make it a usable public service.
Well, from our standpoint, we would be looking at that if we have a full mosaic of the state, that's what we're gonna serve out to the public. The other we'll just use for analysis.
Okay. That's a good point too.
And it doesn't have to stitch together on it.
The two areas that seem like they're least represented here, it's almost like we need to do something like that.
That's what the map on the.
Yeah, that's what we tried to do with the other map.
I'll look at this for a second. These actually line up pretty good.
It was Mississippi and,
Right there it is.
I mean, it seems like the areas
Poinsett,
that we get the most bang for the buck on are,
the Northeast.
gosh. As far as, okay, if we look at municipal boundaries, is that what I'm seeing there?
That's one of the overlays, yeah.
So the municipal boundaries are the River Valley and the Northeast have the most municipal area that we would capture. But I don't know if that's how we should make our decisions.
So from our standpoint, the purple scored out the lowest, but that's just because we were looking at our own lands.
Yeah, that's mostly farm area, except for what's exactly in those municipal boundaries.
And I assume those can be altered slightly, if we want to like
Yeah.
bump them out of.
Yeah.
You can move them.
Question, if we do it the whole state at 9-inch, we won't have any extra money, will we?
That's right.
So let's see what they come up with.
Yeah, so this is definitely contingent upon flying 12-inch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
We're gonna
I
have to
think
make
it's
it
what
anyway.
Shelby's wanting. Shelby just said, can we have that discussion? Is there any way we can rule anything out so that we don't have to wait and do that discussion after we
Right.
come back to the other?
Right.
Well, just so I know, where's your preference based on what your needs are?
1, 2, 3.
So
You can throw the other
NWA,
two, you can throw the other two wherever you want.
Which-
But River Valley,
okay,
Southwest Arkansas, and Southeast.
okay.
Now,
Well, I understand why you would say those things, and I think that's reasonable, but we can't do 3.
yeah, we-
Well, I'm just
Well, I
saying,
can
that's
say
our
that-
rank, 1,
Yeah.
2, and 3.
The southeast area, my county, I've already looked at 3-inch for some of my cities, so we don't have to do that area, in my opinion. Because a lot of that's my county.
Well, then, like I say, that's our third pick.
Yeah.
And what's the time frame? We did 2021 for Hempstead County. And it's wasn't on the original, that other map.
Yeah, that says 22.
Yeah, this is 22, so I mean, 2021 is not considered?
Not on there.
Okay.
Hopefully.
You're saying Hempstead County was flown
2021.
by,
Pictometry.
oh, okay. We did not get that information from them.
Well,
And we
you
have
just
3
did
inches.
I think
22,
we
23.
were only looking at what they had acquired last year and planned for in 2023. So 2021 wouldn't have hit hit the map.
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to get old, but it's not bad.
Right.
At all. So I mean, that would knock out a little piece more of that southwest, or that might
Yeah, I don't even know.
Cities
be one to it.
They are, but I don't know if the cities are using it. And I don't know which cities want it, that'd be another question, like,
I mean, we even
would you
have that
use this
service.
if we flew it?
Comment I was just making, we do realize though that our areas are not, 6 inches is not as important as a downtown area.
And that's what I would be flying, is the downtown at 3. That's what I was looking at.
You were talking about nadir flights, not oblique, or both?
Now,
Well,
This is one of the
and
problems I keep seeing with our flights too, is that like even in 2017, which is so long ago, we flew 12-inch and then all the cities came back and flew it better. Washington Benton, Pulaski,
They're all-
Faulkner, they all just said that's worthless to us, and they all just flew again. And so
But
it
they
just-
have money.
They do, right. And that's what I'm saying is
And they
we're
have a
looking at
lot
the
of
people that have money and are
change.
flying.
Them to change.
Can we fly at 6-inch places that aren't flying? We're in agreement here, I think that.
Well, let me, in the interest of time, what if we just went back and looked at those areas that are on this current map that are white, and designed some alternatives for you that are just, they're white space that aren't covered currently by anything that we're aware of, and we.
On this map, because
Mhm.
that one is colored in some of the space that would be white on this.
Yeah,
map.
yeah.
I'm with you. I think
Come
that's-
up with some alternatives and just bring that back to you as quick as we can.
Yeah, my rough count is 39 counties in the white. So, pretty quick. No high resolution coverage.
Over the last 2 years.
Which is not actually correct, because
Yeah.
both of
Right.
ours are white and they've been flown.
But I do think
And
our
Lonoc
goal
has
is to get the
2022.
most current coverage,
Oh, you said
which is
Lonoc?
why I guess you only went back to 2020.
We were looking at 21 with EEFS, and Eagle View, they were giving us the 22 and 23 planned, so. So we'll take those two action items and act on those as quick as we can.
So board, I think that we need to meet within the next 2 weeks to hammer out, our decision about, yes, we want to absolutely move forward with maybe a statewide consistent flight. We'd be okay with patchwork, that conversation. Hopefully we'll have our estimates back. Shelby, would you like your agency and the board to work on some reach out to fellow state agencies together to formalize an official message that we'd be sending to see their interest in partnering with this, or would this?
We can take that. We would recycle the same material that we've used previously. The only cautionary note that I might bring up, just in terms of your 2-week planning, is that week, that second week is when we'll be at our national meeting.
Yes, Jim.
Yeah.
About 28th, week of the 28th of September, that's 3 weeks. Does that work for you?
That is, that's workable.
There's not good coverage down here in the basement.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, that national meeting is the week of the 18th through the 23rd.
So could we tentatively plan everybody for a meeting on September the 28th? It's Wednesday, September the 28th.
I mean, it works for me.
As long as it ain't in October or November, we're good.
Fields aren't even harvested yet, you're fine.
You said it's 20th, that's right.
Yep, September the 28th, Wednesday, September the 28th.
We will,
Oh, yes.
we can make arrangements to have a virtual, so that if you're not able to travel, you can Zoom in.
Okay.
There's a time, 10.
10 o'clock. Would we have this as a hybrid meeting, also in person and virtual?
We can do
Okay.
that, sure.
So we would do a 10 o'clock to plan for folks to be able to be here. All right.
Now, because that's the decision-making meeting, does that mean Shelby and his folks have to have a revised version of this for approval? So do we need to be communicating with you all in the meantime?
Yeah, so I was gonna say, maybe,
Absolutely.
Working group of some kind?
Yeah.
Will they be able to get us 9-inch processing and 6-inch?
exchanges.
Oh, yeah.
Nine for sure.
If you, I might, since you have the capability, I might request that if you have a priority area, send it to us as a quarter quad. Or let me send you a file and you can prioritize your areas.
When do you think you'll know the answer on the Eagle and all?
We'll start that outreach today, and hopefully, it's possible we might be able to get that by the end of this week.
And then I assume that when you guys get those quotes from Sanborn, we can just see those immediately?
Yeah, we can forward that information as soon as we have it.
Because once again, I mean, if we can't get it, then the blue area in the river valley is gonna be our choice. But if we can get it, it can go someplace else.
Okay.
I don't have a view, but I think Rusty probably will, on what the priority is. So
Rusty probably knows.
he'll have an idea about what he wants.
Okay, board, so I'll get with Nita and we'll send out that calendar invite for the 28th. We'll make sure it's blocked off on everybody's calendar. And with that, do I hear a motion to adjourn for today?
I'll move to adjourn. Second.
Thank
I made enough motions.
you. All right, so we're adjourned. See the screen that our next plan for on our regular schedule, I guess, meeting for December the 7th. So see that, but we'll see everybody on September the 28th in person and or via Zoom. And I appreciate everybody's time today. I think we had a great meeting. Shelby, thank you guys.
Thank you, board.